Uh, all right, it's Alexander Lawrence on the Portable Internet. This is part 2. And
see, who needs to be a Zoom subscriber? You just hang up and start over again.
yeah, sorry. Well, I like the 2 parts because
Okay.
some people like to take breaks, and so I had to go to the bathroom in the last one. Okay, so let me go to a couple quotes that I kind of liked. And page 62. Okay, so there's a bit. This might be in the same chapter I'm just about to talk about. Let's see. Yeah, I'm kind of in the same area. Okay, so on page 62, there's this thing. But language exists to fuck society's constrictions up the butt. Language is a tool of the visionary, the anarchist, the child, the artist, the saint, the lover, and Bob Flanagan. Okay, can you comment on that one?
Okay, well,
because I think this book, see, like, people, if you're writing and it's just like a nice historical novel that kind of meets the requirements, it's great. But I think more books, if you're going to write it all, you got to take a risk and stuff, and you got to be you got to be a traffic light and stuff. And this is a traffic light. This book is very risky and risque. And it's can you talk about that? Can you talk about that comment? Like about language, about
okay, the language part. The language is another theme that runs throughout this book. And the other people have asked me about this passage. It seems to be kind of popular. So it goes to the fact that language, kind of is, as a production of culture, is the means by which we navigate reality with each other. And language has become so corrupted by marketing forces, specifically capitalists, but also other forces, religious, etc., that it has been turned into the antithesis of the visionary foundation of language, which is the imagination. It has been turned to the opposite, which the narrator here defines as clop, C-L-O-P. So he says the language is the tool of the visionary, the anarchist, the child, the artist, the saint, the lover, and Bob Flanagan. And it starts off with that list. You've heard that list before. Oh, well, poetry is, the product of the saint and the lover and the madman or whatever. It's kind of a cliche. So I just kind of was going with that list and then ended with Bob Flanagan, because Bob Flanagan is just an amazing poet and really a person who has sort of a living word with him, and he was a tremendous improvisational poet and singer, etc. So that's kind of half funny, half making fun of it a little bit just to throw him in there. It's another weird thing about this book, Alex, that some of these people in it, such as Bob Flanagan, or bands at the time that are mentioned like Sonic Youth, Red Cross, etc., went on to have some longevity in their careers.
I got my Sonic Youth t-shirt on.
Yeah, there you go. So Bob Flanagan was a great friend of mine and artistic collaborator. So it's no surprise that he was among the friends that are in the book. It's just a wonderful kind of twist of fate that he has well, not a twist of fate. I mean, he deserved all his fame that he now has. But there he is, Bob Flanagan.
Yeah, Bob Flanagan, he like Kathy Acker. I mean, he was like a one-off. He was like a one-man movement on his own. And, he's like the patron saint of the whole thing, I think, in a way.
Yeah.
Okay, so getting back to the chapters, I mean, the next one's Carousel, and this one's like a kind of an apology. I think you kind of get apologetic in this chapter. And then after that is, what's that? Dear Marcy. You get suicidal, and then there's sex fantasy number 6 happens in this one. After the suicidal,
push your titties together, that one.
Yeah, and that's you're kind of quoting Acker herself there.
That's a little bit of a misquoting from Blood and Guts in High School, I think. Yeah, good one.
And then the frog, and then there's a scene in the DMV, and then you go to Club Lingerie. Club Lingerie was kind of like, for people that don't know, it was like kind of like a continuation of the early 80s scenes that started out at the Mask and the Whiskey and the Roxy. It kind of Brendan Mullen kind of moved it over to Club Lingerie, and a lot of and some of the Chinatown Club
Brendan.
had closed by that time. So a lot of people were kind of, people that you saw 5 years ago kind of ended up at the Club Lingerie.
Brendan Mullen, who booked the Mask, which was like the kind of the first key like underground punk club in Hollywood, then moved on to Club Lingerie, which was a much more upscale nightclub, but he booked like the weeknights, and he just did tremendous bookings there. He was really great.
So yeah, the frog. Oh yeah, there's kind of like this scene about the frog that gets
The flat frog, right?
Flat frog and the DMV, and then and then you go to a DMV, and then there's like a sex fantasy number 7 with the DMV lady, and but that didn't happen, like you said,
Right.
And then there's this kind of ego disintegration. Alan Watts' whole thing, and I mean, this whole book's like kind of like an acid trip, but this is where it comes full circle here with the ego disintegration, which is great, which kind of goes with the suicide and the death, and then of course you change the channel because like you don't want to die completely, and we get the Ann B show, and then there's some pot brownies and hash brownies, and there's this kind of reference to Laurie Anderson. I guess is that the musician Laurie Anderson?
Yeah, and Lonnie Anderson.
Lonnie Anderson and Burt Reynolds and all that. Right. And then we get what is this? Marjorie. This is like the last fantasy, which has to do with like having sex with models and Fredericks of Hollywood. It was kind of funny. In the later 80s, I went out with a girl that worked at Fredericks of Hollywood and stuff. Yeah. So I kind of like remember that period, and so.
Right.
So and then
I would just say other people have asked me about that part too. So we had this final sex fantasy, I guess is the last one, is about about the narrator developing a fetish for the trappings of female glamour or something like that. Yeah, exactly. And he kind of imagines his girlfriends with yuppie style haircuts and wearing lingerie and things like this. Came up at the Chris Krause event too the other night. And I think to me that fits in kind of with the other themes of the book about the network marketing and everything. Like even as the character is trying to escape, the corruption of language and the insidious infiltration of marketing into television and all media, he's also sort of developing this taste for sort of his obsessive relationships with women start to include a desire for women dressed up in sort of the trappings of a material culture. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And for people who don't know, Fredericks of Hollywood, it was kind of like later became like Victoria's Secret.
Yeah, before Victoria, exactly. Yeah,
it was kind of like a thing, and it was maybe a local Southern California thing, Fredericks of Hollywood, that people would go there, and I mean, and okay, well, I'll get it in the last chapter, which is a life-size video game. I mean, it's like life, dream, reality, Disneyland. It's like maybe, like I'm thinking, like, oh, maybe this whole novel took place in this video game dream cave and stuff. Like, maybe he's there turning the channels, and he didn't go anywhere. He was just like in his mind, and like this is 85, so like I said before. Like people, this is when people used to go to porno theaters and you had to go see like Deep Throat and, Mrs. Jones. And then in the mid 80s, that's when everybody like got their VCRs and started watching porn at home and stuff. This is kind of like, this is
a key moment an inflection moment in the culture.
And why Betamax isn't around, because the one company did the VHS did the porn films, and Betamax didn't do any porn. So
it's like, it shows you how pornography is such a cultural commercial driver.
And and so like I mean, you and David Trinidad have kind of went into this Disneyland, this kind of as a signifier or something. And you kind of get this in this last chapter, and I mean, I guess Baudrillard was kind of like writing about simulation.
I need to read that book. That was brought up to me on the Contain podcast the other day.
Oh yeah. I mean, that was also some stuff in the he had a book called America, and he had I remember he had the parking lot at Disneyland. He kind of compared it to like a death camp or something.
You got to read that. See, I had never even read that till Barrett from Contain mentioned it just a couple days ago.
But
let me just say something about the life-size video game Dream Cave. So I like how you so this construct that the narrator posits of him being able to enter a dream. He has like 5 different names for it: the 3D video cave, the 3D mental hologram, the life-size video game Dream Cave, the 3D video cave, whatever. He just gets tired of trying to be consistent in its name. And then he compares it to Disneyland's Monsanto Adventure Through Inner Space, which was this crazy dark ride, which is basically a commercial for Monsanto, but it also, it takes you, the experiencer, down to the level and beneath of a molecule, and penetrating sort of the deepness of inner space. Now that's what's happening to the character here. He basically, his ego disintegration, like you says, becomes so all-consuming and atomized that he's searching for his identity again. But he does realize finally at the end, I think, that the imagination is the key to preserving or finding an identity that is, quote, real or more, at least more fulfilling for him, that he's in touch with sort of his visionary sense of a soul, and that's related to art and language and literature and music. And there's a value inherent in there. And if he can just kind of grasp onto that, he can kind of ride that ride to the end and to find out who he is.
Yeah, and on page 105, I'm quoting from the book again, he goes, "Now I'm doubting everything. Before I fly at will, now I'm falling. Stop it. Believe again in this life dream reality."
Yeah.
He's kind of like, just like shouting out to the reader, like, this is really happening. This is, because it's, I mean, the whole book is like a vision that he's kind of witnessing. It's like, I don't know if it's, real or imagined, or
I like that.
Or it's a drug trip, or it's still in doubt. And that kind of stood out. I mean,
okay.
And
all right, good.
It's good stuff there.
Well, thank you. I like your interpretations.
Congratulations, just writing such such a visionary book. I mean, it's great because it's such a risky book, because it's like, is this do we gotta like lock this guy up? Is he a 51 or is he a genius? It's like one of the other.
Or is it all just a goof?
Yeah, it's a goof, or it's just comedy. It's just, hey man, but it's definitely like inspired. If Kathy Acker was the inspiration, that's great.
And she loved it. She really did. Even though she was pissed off that I used her name, she did write me that postcard and says, "You're really a good writer, never what's expected." So I'm honored. So every time I hear that, I cry.
Well, you got that because she never, I was friendly with her. She wasn't like the best friend. She didn't avoid me. Most people, like, she either was very competitive with, or the friendship like ended at some point. And I moved to New York in '95, so I didn't the last couple of years, but I didn't feel like the friendship had ended. We could have picked it up, and Kathy, this is like it's definitely a visionary work. It's like, whatever, you're kind of an Orphic poet, going down to the death of hell and coming back.
Well, as Sabrina writes in her afterward, it's a breakfast cereal version of the sublime. So there's definitely the sublime in there, and there's definitely
definitely check out. Definitely check out Sabrina's. It's way more intellectual than anything I can do. If I wrote a book about this book, it would be like a 500-page book that just kind of went on forever.
Right.
Just like that, and people would just get like people would just go insane and stuff. So I guess we're at the end of the book, but this is a great book. Everyone should read this. This is like the book of the year, one of the great ones of '85 and forever. And so, okay, so let's talk about some of the other things that are coming up. What are you working on next? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I do have another manuscript. Working title is Myth Lab, MYTH, as in meth lab, but Myth Lab, theories of Eros and eschatology. And I always have to explain, I keep threatening to take that part out of the title because no one knows what the fuck eschatology means. Do you know what it means?
Yeah, it's a study. Ology is study. What is that, of the beginning or?
Yeah, and the ends. This is a bit. It's a
theory. Yeah. It's the study of apocalypse or something.
Yeah, it's like a theological term, sort of like in biblical studies. That that what happens at the end of time and what happens in the apocalypse. Yeah. So it's Myth Lab, theories of Eros. Everyone knows Eros is, love and sex, and eschatology. So I'm really fascinated by the end of time, about human evolution, about what's happening with technology and human machine hybrids, what that means in a sexual dimension in terms of HRT, for example, or transsexualism, or body modification of all kinds, bimboism, all kinds of gender fluidity all throughout, and what that might mean in terms of the evolution of the species, and also some very serious themes like, are we going to make it? Like, is the human race going to make it to the end, or will we, allow the fossil fuel companies really to overtake our the pace of our own evolution, and they would allow us to actually get to the next phase and enter the singularity.
And TikTok alarm clock, that's your latest piece, or what
that's from this manuscript. Yeah. Oh. So it's kind of about social media and algorithms and how that feeds into this whole trend.
So, getting back to Fear of Kathy Acker, some of the fantasies are sort of straight white male fantasies. It's not, you're not getting into like anal sex or bondage.
Well, there is anal sex in there.
Oh, there is? Okay, I missed that.
How could you miss that? It's one of the fantasies.
Maybe I gave up.
But it's very much a straight white cis het male.
Yeah. It's not, you're not like pissing on or doing any kind of, there's not, the sex is very, it's hopefully very vanilla sex and stuff.
It's very normative.
Normative sex, yeah. It's like normal sex. It's not too out there. Are you going to take it to a new level in these new books, or is it going to be like similar kind of?
Well, there is, maybe, yeah. The new book has much more, like I said, transsexualism and stuff like that. It's about more boundary crossing. Yeah.
Okay, well, sure. This guy was definitely a boundary crosser, and he was a little bit into the extreme sexual things, which is Bob Flanagan. So there's a new Bob Flanagan book coming out, Anthology or something?
There is. Sabrina Tarasoff, who we just keep mentioning, she's editor of this book. It's called Fun to be Dead, the poetry of Bob Flanagan, I think it's called. So a lot of Bob Flanagan's earlier books are out of print. So she's gathered them all together and is going to publish this later this year, along with Christina Kite Gallery.
Who's the curator of the Bob Flanagan estate, or who's taking care of his?
I guess Sherry Rose.
Okay,
that's a good question. I don't know. Someone's got his materials. She has all her own photos, where she documented everything. So I don't know. I could ask her. I just saw her the other day. She came to the event.
Because like Bob, he published with so many different small publishers that it's like once he died in the 90s, nobody was really like kind of like working to get him to stay in print or keep the Bob.
Well, yeah, I don't know why. He was very famous for a while and still is, has huge longevity. And there was that a great book, a research publications book, and then Kirby Dick did a great documentary about Bob, and Kirby's gone on to do tremendous, very important documentaries about Woody Allen, etc. So, so he's been out there for a while, but yeah, I don't know why his early, books, Nature and Fate are cruel to books. I mean, it's hard to find them. You have to pay $1,000 to find those first editions now. So this would be great to have them all in one piece.
Yeah, I used to have a copy of the Fuck Journal. It cost.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it costs like 3 times as much as just the regular issues.
Yeah.
They're so rare because
So that'll be a big event, this finally everyone will have Bob's great poetry. He was a great poet. He wasn't known as much for his poetry as for his, very transgressive performances and stuff.
Yeah, well, because I went to Long Beach State and Bob Flanagan went to Long Beach State, and
Mhm.
we were kind of connected to Gerald Laughlin, who was like the big poetry guy there.
Yep.
Yep. So I was aware of I had seen him read, and I mean, when I saw you read from the chapbooks, I mean,
Mhm.
people took it as kind of a comic piece. They didn't really take it very seriously, but I take it, comedy and serious. I take it both ways
It's
now.
both ways.
Yeah,
It goes both ways.
but I remember.
Easy.
I remember you reading it like back in the 80s or early 90s, and it was people were laughing. They thought it was like a humorous reaction back then.
Yeah, we'll see how they react now.
So what are you gonna do? Okay, so the book's out.
Mhm.
You've done a few book fairs and book things, and like what's coming up later this summer? What can we attend that's coming up?
I just did one event at Skylight Books with Chris Kraus, Semiotext, I Love Dick, the whole thing. That was great. And then I'm doing 2 events next week in New York. One June 28th at Powerhouse Arena with Stephanie LaCava, who is a powerhouse in her own right. And then another one July 1st at John Giorno Foundation, also that one's in Manhattan. And that one's going to be like a super, super duper powerful guest list type event, but very limited attendance because it's a small venue. Eileen Miles is going to be there. We're going to have music. I'm going to do a performance of Fear of Kathy Acker, created for videos with Lydia Sviatoslavsky, who created this tremendous videos that I'll read the text to. And then July 26th here in LA again, I'm coming back to LA to do a big event again at Poetic Research Bureau. That one's going to have a lot of guest stars as guest people as well. Yeah.
Is that somewhere in Culver City, or where is that?
No, that Poetic Research Bureau is great. You should go check it out. It's in Filipino Town, basically Beverly Boulevard, almost in downtown.
Yeah, I'm close to that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's Joseph Mosconi's place, and he has events there almost every night, and they're great. And people they're filled up every night. They're really good events.
And where should people look for information about Jack Skelley? Do you have a website? To buy this book, they should go to Amazon, or where should they go?
It's Amazon. Yeah, you can get it at all the platforms. You can buy it on all the platforms. I don't have a website per se. Go to my Instagram. It has all the links.
Oh yeah. Okay, so we're gonna send people to the Instagram and to Amazon.
Helter Skelley. Helter Skelley.
And Jack Skelley is also a member of the Lawndale band. Like, what are you guys doing? What's going on in Lawndale world?
So Lawndale, strangely enough, exists at the time the book was written and still exists now. We were on SST Records at that time, but we've still been recording and playing this whole time, off and on. But last year we did release an 8-song EP or LP, whatever you want to call it. It's on Spotify and all the other platforms. The name of that is Twango, not Tango, but Twango. And it's got our kind of our trademark sound of kind of rock instrumentals influenced by all various genres, but including, jazz and punk rock and stuff like that. And we're performing all the time. I think we've got a July 9th event at Harvell's in Santa Monica, the punk rock barbecue that our drummer Dave Childs books about every 3-4 months.
Okay. Well,
yeah.
Anything else to add here?
That's plenty. They let them figure it out.
So definitely read the books. Send Jack anonymous letters.
Horny
Well,
dreams.
full, yes, yeah, anonymous sex letters with dreams, and he can use that material for the next book. And
There you go.
you know,
All right.
you need like girl, you like gotta get over his Catholic guilt and all that.
It's all that, right?
And
Or the character. Maybe it's not really me.
thank you for talking with me today. We support literature. People should read these books. These are great books that we're talking about this
Yeah.
year. And yeah, look
Great.
forward to seeing you in the real world. We'll talk soon.
Fantastic. Thanks, Alex.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Okay.